Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And this is Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
And this is a super epic episode.
I am very excited for this
happening
episode.
right now.
Really excited.
So, Rob, would you like to introduce our guest?
I'm so excited! Tonight, we have got Kara Norris of the Blood Cell, bloodpythons.com. How are you doing tonight?
What's up?
I am pretty good, guys. Thank you so much.
We're super excited to have you on tonight.
Hell yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pumped to be here.
Hell yeah. So, for the people who don't know you or might not have heard about you before, if they're not maybe in the short tail realm, where did you kind of get your start in reptiles?
Oh, well, you know, I started off as a boa girl way back in the day. I'm originally from Texas, and so a lot of my background is kind of native Texas reptiles, and then got into some like Australian pythons and that kind of stuff, and just started keeping all manner of different snakes. I was fortunate to have some really great mentors early on. Tracy Thompson, who was a zookeeper at Dallas Zoo, he's just awesome. He's a badass. I love you, Trey. And he was kind of my first real mentor, and he actually introduced me to the Barkers, Dave and Tracy Barker at VPI, which is where I saw, you know, my first albino blood pythons and all that kind of stuff, and it was just hooked from there on. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of my roots there. I spent almost 10 years working at Nerd, New England Reptile, as you guys know, or I met you and Jeremy, and so you know, just kept a lot of everything for a while, but bloods and short tails have really been kind of the primary passion for. I hate to say this because it just makes me feel really old, but 20 years now.
I think as the time goes and we all start looking back at that number, we're all a little like, ooh, it's been a while.
Dude, like, you know, I'm gonna hang it all out there. I turned 44 on Tuesday, and I don't even know what that means because I don't feel what I think that's probably supposed to feel like.
Right?
It's like I'm still a big kid playing with snakes, you know.
For real.
There you go.
That's really it.
So
all I care about.
growing up in Texas, what was like some of your favorite natives to find or keep?
You know, I loved like fence lizards, Galapagos, that kind of stuff. Horned lizards, horny toads.
Oh,
those
yeah, hell yeah.
were just, oh my gosh. You know, like childhood memories of walking dirt roads with my grandfather up in Oklahoma, and we'd walk these red dirt roads and find horned lizards and tarantulas and toads and box turtles and just so many native species that I look at them now as they're kind of disappearing from the landscape, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, these are things that we have to preserve, and the only way we're going to preserve them is if people know about them and they understand them in a positive light. And
yeah,
I don't know, you find that the threads of these species are woven into the tapestry of kind of who you are as you grow up, and you realize that if any of those threads disappeared, like a major part of your life would too, and yeah, they're just also near and dear. So any of that stuff, you know, I mean, Texas rat snakes and all of their feisty glory and red brain snakes, just any, you know, red-eared sliders. I mean, pick one. And Baird's rat snakes, mottled rock rattlesnakes, Atrox, of course, Alterna. I mean, just all of it. Love them all. So
hell yeah.
Absolutely. So what was it like? I got to ask you, when you saw your first like albino blood python was over VPI, and what was it like? Because the first time I saw one, my heart melted.
You know, and I'm sure Tracy's gonna hear this at some point and like laugh, but I was a mess. I was a hot mess. I was just overwhelmed with emotion looking at the beauty of the snake. And I remember so distinctly, Tracy was like, you know, I know you both people think your snakes are amazing, but look at this. And it was just this glowing red, ridiculous animal. And I like literally had tears streaming down my face. And it was a defining moment in snake keeping for me. So yeah, it was incredible and overwhelming. And ever since then, hooked.
Yeah. Seeing your first blood or short tail in person, like for blood and short tail people, I remember it was just like, I was just enthralled with like the shape of their head, the eye stripe, and just like their body structure. I was just in love from the moment I first saw them.
That long chiseled head with the wide, meaty back skull, and the way those eyes just kind of flick over and train in on you, and it's just,
Yeah, for sure.
Done. Stick a fork in me. Yeah, glorious.
So Jeremy's working with some short tails. I produced some short tails this year, and you've just been focusing on the reddest of the red when it comes to Brongersma, and then just the super black Sumatrans. What sort of projects are your favorite? Which ones really just like have been some that you look dearly on over the years?
That's a great question. So, as Rob, I know you're aware of, Jeremy, you might be too, the TBC Raspberry Project, as I call it. And this is a project that started when I was at NERD, when I was in New England. You know, got this glorious wild caught female who was just psycho, just complete. This was just a snake that would sit up and like levitate at you and fling her entire body. I mean, Jeremy, I know you like to call them meat missiles, but this was just, she took it to a level of insanity. It was just
meat cannon.
To this day, thank God. No, I mean seriously, I'm really kind of glad that I haven't run into many that were just as awful as she was, because she was just an irascible snake. And but she was gorgeous. I mean, literally. Raspberry, like if you look at the color of a fresh ripe raspberry, that was her color. And you know, it took a couple of years to get her to breed, and then she finally did. And I'm literally sitting here 12 years later looking at, you know, I think we're 4 generations in now on her grandkids, like great grandkids. And that has been really near and dear. My husband Ryan has a project that he calls the Manic Panic line, and that's from a very similar snake that he had imported and outcrossed and created just these insane red-headed animals, and then some with stripes. And so those are the Manic Panic and Raspberry lines are kind of the foundation. And we have like some PE stripe, original Pro Exotic stripe line stuff. It's pretty solid. And then just, you know, the blackest of the black kind of Sumatran Curtis that are so sexy, but yes. So all of those.
It's hard it's hard to look at those and like not fall in love with them, because they're this like pitch black snake, and they have these like unique eyes, and they draw you in.
They really do, and they just, you know, and people see them, they're like, I want jet black babies, and you're like, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's cool, but they have some pattern. They have some pattern when they're young, and you've got to know what to look for in the youngsters, you know, to really pick the blackest ones. But it's like, as you guys know, and I mean, Rob, I know you see this with your Borneo projects, and Jeremy, some of the various stuff that you're getting into. These are a snake where patience pays off. Patience rewards.
For sure.
You are rewarded by your patience because they bloom into something. You know, so many other species, they start off brilliant as babies, and then they kind of muddy up as they mature. And we're so lucky to have it the other way around. If you've got really nice ones, they just get better and better and better with age. It's exciting.
Yeah, we actually have one Manic Panic blood at Nerd still, and she just, every time I open up her enclosure, she glows.
Yeah. That probably is one of my favorites in the room.
Yeah.
That's a neat line. They're, you know, and it's interesting because we get 2 looks out of that line. We get 2 very distinct appearances. There's like the red-headed, pink undertone line, and then there's like this brick red with like burnt orange, and those tend to be highly striped. And so like 2 years ago, we took Sucker Punch, TBC Sucker Punch is her name, and I love her. And she's just this insane red-headed Manic Panic animal, and we actually bred her into the PE stripe line. And so some of her kids have just been insane, and so that's stuff that we're raising up. And you know, then we did a few years ago, we did the PE stripe line into our raspberry stuff, and that's where we made $1 Million Baby, and he's actually, I'm breeding him for the first time this year. So
that's exciting.
Yeah. And that's going to be a line breeding, so he's going to his cousin who is a line bred raspberry, so that'll be PE striped raspberry to a line bred raspberry, so they should be really, really red, and hopefully we'll get some good stripes in there. So exciting stuff. That's a sneak peek of what's coming up, hopefully. Knock on wood.
Speaking my language with the stripe stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a sucker for a good stripe.
Yeah, right? So you like a fiddle. They're just, they're so pretty. And you know, it's my theory with the stripes has always been, well, so if you have this striped animal, here's all this reduced pattern, that's more room for red to show through. And so you take your very best red paint job, and just, you can't beat that with a stick.
Yeah, so, for sure. For sure. Oof. I know.
So
Like,
what about you guys?
Why-
I'm gonna butt in for a second. Like, what do you guys have coming up this season? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as you were talking about, like being able to really get that eye for the babies that are gonna become the nicest adults. I do a lot of stuff with carpets, and jungle carpets are notorious for that. You get that baby, and you're looking at the whole clutch, and every once in a while you'll find that one.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like after the first shed or so, but you'll find that one that's like, you're the one that's gonna be nice, and if I'm wrong, I'll cry. But, but you're the one that's supposed to be nice.
Yes.
I've seen it happen where like I've sold babies where I'm like, you'll be all right. Like you'll still be a nice animal, but I don't think you're gonna be the creme de la creme. And then somebody sends me a picture of it 2 years later, and I'm like, shit.
I've been there more times than I can count.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So let me ask you, like with the carpets, is that something? Is it usually after a shed you feel like you have a pretty firm grasp, or do you need to raise them for 6 months or a year or anything before you feel like you're 100% sure?
It can be rough. Over the years, I've gotten it down to usually within the first shed or two, I have a pretty decent idea on what's going to look really, really good. Every once in a while, I'll get thrown a curveball with an animal, but the nice thing, I guess you could call it the nice thing about them, is they can be very tricky to sell until those yellows start to come in.
Yeah.
So oftentimes I'm holding on to them until those yellows come in. So for 6 to 8 months, I'm just watching them develop, and usually the ones I set aside tend to be the nicer ones. But every once in a while, there'll be like maybe 2 out of a clutch that shock me. And once they've hit like that 6-month mark, the colors really start to pop, and I'm like, not what I expected, but cool. Somebody's gonna be happy when they get you.
Absolutely. Well, and it's very similar, especially with Bronger's Eye, because it's kind of the same thing. We were talking about Curtis and people wanting those jet black babies.
Mm-hmm.
It always cracks me up when I see people saying, I want fire engine red Bronger's Eye hatchling. And I watch all kind of that core group of us hardcore blood python keepers. Well, we're all messaging each other going, all right, so who wants to be the one to tell this guy that that's not? It's kind of like, all right, paper, rock, scissors, guys. Who's gonna burst the bubble? But we all know it's a waiting game. And there are times you have to stick them on the shelf. Like kind of going back to our manic panic line, some of those animals can be really, just sleepers where they'll be kind of, okay, all right, that's kind of neat. And then they'll go through almost like an ugly duckling phase.
Yeah.
And you almost want to throw on the towel on him, and then you wait. Like I had one, TBC Whiplash is his name. He was this. Oh my gosh, he's so freaking red, and he's got all this amazing pink. But I mean, this was a snake that I always thought he was nice, and I'm like, okay, you're pretty. I'm gonna stick you in a tub and just kind of see what you do. And he was brick red for a long time, had a really nice yellow stripe down his back, and then one day he shed, and it was right when he turned about 4 years old, and it just like the snake lit up with these crazy pink and purple undertones, and I'm just like, what the heck happened here? And so, totally unexpected. I wasn't quite prepared to see that extent of color out of him, but I mean, it was one of those things where, usually by 3, I feel like I have it dialed in, like what they're going to look like 3 years, and then you wait another year and we totally surprise you. So it's constantly a learning game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like especially so, like as you start to really dial that stuff in, when you've like really put that time and energy into a project, and you're like, okay, I think I'm starting to, like, I think I've seen most of what I can see out of this, so I can refine it and whatever, and then something pops up like that, and you're like, cool.
Well,
thanks for that curveball.
Absolutely. I've said for a long time, if there's anything I know about breeding snakes, it's that I don't know anything about breeding snakes. Because I just learn something new every year. Wow, okay, cool.
Yeah,
awesome. And we, to get the most out of that, we have to put aside the things that we think we know, or any kind of ego, or any kind of preconceived notions, and just be open to soaking up everything these animals have to teach us. So it's definitely part of the journey. Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. And then like working with the Borneos, there's so much variation to begin with, and then trying to think of what they're gonna look like after 2 years, I'm like,
oh my gosh, right? It's yeah.
Some of the
like
stuff I think I can kind of pick out what I think it's gonna look like, and I'm starting to get an eye for things now, just after like seeing different stuff that's being produced. And I do a lot of watching of what other people are producing. That's one of my favorite things to do, is follow what somebody else is doing and just watch where their offspring goes, how they mature. And so when I see something that looks similar, I can kind of get an eye for, okay, this similar animal kind of matured like this, so I think that this animal might kind of go a similar route. And then there's always the curveballs and everything, but I feel like I'm getting better at kind of picking those things out.
Getting better. I mean, Rob, you've always had a great eye at that. You've always, like, ever since I've known you, you've just been a sponge of, like, soaking things up. You've always been one of those super observant people where you just kind of, watch and you're like, all right, let's see where this goes. Let's see what this does. And I see like your mind's like a filing cabinet. You just kind of tuck things away for future reference, like that. That's one of those things that I've always thought about your learning method and how you adapt to all of this. So yes, that's 100% spot on. You're a sponge.
Yes,
so,
I try to be. It definitely can help because if you kind of go in blind on certain things, it just like you can definitely get thrown for a loop.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you assume or if you have kind of this rigid, this is the only way that this is going to be. It's like these arguments we see online. Just add social media and you've got an instant expert. This is the only way that you can keep a snake happy and healthy. Well, you know what? That's not true.
Yeah, let me tell you 7 other ways I've done it.
Exactly. And so, like, not only are you losing your audience, you're losing that person who's interested in keeping the snake happy and healthy, and it just becomes this pissing match over who knows more. And it's that's the know-it-all syndrome is just such a detriment to any hobby, really, but I think especially with reptile keepers, just because there seems to be so much ego wrapped up in it. Anyway,
it's painful.
I will stay off that soapbox tonight, I promise.
I'm about to step on it because I've got some things to say.
Oh, man.
Okay.
I've stepped away from a lot of Facebook information. I used to share a lot in Facebook groups, and I really enjoyed posting in them and sharing because I miss forums, because forums is where I met a lot of the core people that like I admired and the people who taught me so much. And when everything kind of shifted over to Facebook, that just all got like not lost, but like people kind of they got lost in touch with that. Mm-hmm. And now there's all these people who think that they know everything because they've produced one clutch or they've read a bunch of care sheets, and it's like there's so much more. There's so much more. When you've convinced yourself that you know everything, guess what? You don't know enough now.
No.
You don't.
No. That's true. And, the unfortunate part of that is that, with a lot of these species, any idiot can pair 2 snakes up and breed them.
Yep.
Yeah.
But keeping them successfully long-term enough to actually see projects through to fruition and take them into multi-generational kind of outcomes, that's kind of a different ball of wax.
A lot more.
Yeah.
Yes. One clutch does not an expert make, as we all know.
For sure. But I did breed ball pythons that one time, and I think I have it down.
Well, nobody's perfect. Not like I have any room to talk. It just knows I've had to find my share of ball pythons over the years. Mostly by default.
Yes.
Oh, that's
so
good.
I want to ask you, like, being close and being in Texas and being around Dave and Tracy, what was that like? How was that like in kind of molding your view of reptiles?
Oh, man. Tracy is one of those women that she's so empowering, I think, to other women. She is just this little tiny powerhouse of a woman who has this innate gift to breed snakes and to just be successful with them. And she's just so inspiring because her passion for the species that she works with is, it's palpable when you're around her, and it's like you can't help but get excited about what she's excited about. And people like that, I think, are just invaluable, to any kind of hobby or pursuit. But then you take with that kind of the vast wealth of knowledge that she and Dave have, and just all that they've contributed over the years, with the books and the fighting legislation and trying to encourage other people and to set them up and help them be successful. I guess in a lot of ways it shaped for me kind of the pay it forward mentality. Mm-hmm. Literally the very first time I visited Tracy, she gave me a possible possible het pied male ball python. And she was like, and a normal female. And she was like, here you go, breed these, raise them up, and see if you can prove them out. And it took me like 6 years to finally prove them out, but I did. And it turned out he was a het pied, and those were, like the first pies I ever hatched. And it was just, It was super cool.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
because she's just like, here, take these snakes and see what they do. And just the fact that she would be willing, I was a stranger. She didn't know me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this is back when pies were, even possible het pies were still worth something. And
right.
But just that encouraging, take this and learn and see what you can do with it. And it was just, I think that stamped my outlook. And it was just always, hey, I want to make sure that people come away feeling the same way when I have interacted with them, that they feel encouraged and they feel enabled and they feel like this is a possibility for them too. Because that's just never something you ever want to strip away from anyone. And you always want to try to encourage growth wherever you can see it. And so, yeah, it was just monumental, And then, of course, Tracy introduced me to Kevin, and the rest was kind of history there. So I think she shaped my herp experience in a really big way there. So, yes.
Yeah.
All of the above.
And I feel like the short-tail community as a whole, like in general, the majority of the core people that are in the short-tail community kind of are like that, where they kind of want to see people successful. It's not like this crazy competition to see who can make the newest morph or whatever. A lot of the people in the short-tail community want to see you do cool stuff with your collection.
Yeah.
And that's like super. That's one of the things that has kept me around the short-tail community. I love Bloods and short-tails regardless, but that has always kept me coming back to the groups and encourage me to share with people the stuff that I'm doing and the stuff that I'm seeing, because they're so, like, I don't want to say selfless, but they care about the wider community as a whole, especially around short tails.
I agree 100%. Back in the forum days, you remember when like the bloodpythons.com forum started.
Yep.
Back then we had just little bitty handfuls of really, really nice snakes. And this is when Dave and Tracy were doing all their work with the morphs and really getting them established and out there. And the rest of us are just like, hey, man, we have these snakes and they stopped biting us, and this is really great. It was that camaraderie over, hey, we're willing to put the time in and to literally put in the blood, sweat, and tears to make friends with these snakes. And we all just kind of got it. Like, nobody had an ego. Nobody wanted to be better than anyone else. It was just kind of like, all right, cool. This is awesome. And, it's one of the things that you said earlier about social media versus the forums. When you knew you were logging into a forum, you were going to see one thing, and that was blood pythons or whatever species you were into at that time. Mm-hmm. Social media, you get bombarded with all this other crap that you got to kind of wade through to get to where you're going. Yeah. And I think back in the day, things were a lot simpler. But yeah, everyone was really encouraging about being successful because a lot of it we were still learning together.
Yes.
And we were figuring this stuff out with the line breeding, with the different gray morph Borneos, with the marbles and everything else. But whatever it was anyone was into, we were all kind of forging those paths. Unfortunately, we had people like David Tracy, like Keith, like some of these other folks that had, the older generation that had kind of gone on ahead. But for most of us, I think in that next tier down, we were really trying to still figure a lot of this out. So that's where everyone had just kind of leaned in and been super supportive. And that is absolutely still echoed today. I think, we see it in the core group of keepers and even the Blood Python group on Facebook. I mean, it gets a little squirrely in there now that it's over 8,000 members, but day to day, there's not too much drama, and there's still a lot of emphasis on learning and just really helping people be successful, because these snakes are just so amazing. And if you're not enjoying them, then what are you even doing here?
For reals, though.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I appreciate a lot about groups like the Blood Python group is that it's not a smattering of other stuff. I like to go to species or specific groups and just see what's in that complex. I've left a lot of the groups that are, let's look at everything, because I'm not interested. Like, I like reptiles. I can appreciate all of them, but the things that I'm interested in are very specific.
Exactly.
So I appreciate
it's funny. We get that, though. We get people that have a fit of, why can't I post my boas in here? Why can't I post my ball pythons? I'm like, sorry, dude, not happening.
Not happening.
And we've had people like really pitch a fit about not being able to, but every time it happens, the core group of members says, no, we just want bloods and short tails. And I think what you just said right there illustrates why.
I appreciate it so much more because when I come to a blood python group and I see a bunch of things that are not blood pythons, I'm like, I could have gone to any group to see all this stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I love that about the blood and short tail community, and it feels like not every community everyone's on the same page, but it feels like the vast majority of people who keep bloods and short tails are all on the same page.
Mhm. I agree. Nope, I do too, and it's always been I think a hallmark of our group. I know there are people that say, oh, they're very cliquish or very clannish or whatever, and it's like I just think we have a really low tolerance for bullshit.
Yep.
And that's what
just
so
like
much
the
comes
snakes.
down to.
Just like the snakes.
Like blood pythons. You have that threshold where once you cross that line, we're done.
Yep, we're done.
And I think the keepers are kind of the same way. Like as long as you're cool, man, we're gonna be cool. But you start crossing that line, no bueno.
Yeah, no holds barred.
Yep.
Exactly. So, yeah. It's nice to see that some things never changed.
Right?
Yes.
I've only met Tracy one time. I met her at Daytona when I had gone in 2009, I think it was. And just talking to her a little bit about the bloods and the short tails, I can feel exactly what you're saying. Just like she's so passionate about the things that she works with, and she brought like a couple morphs on the table. She didn't like bring a crazy amount to display. She didn't really bring a lot to sell. She was just kind of there to talk to people and kind of meet people. And I had a great time talking to her there. And then later on in the day, they announced that she was helping raise funds for US Ark, and she was going to be in the dunk tank out front. So I had to go dunk her.
Absolutely. Did you make the shot?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Sweet. That's amazing. But and that's what I think. Again, we go back to that core group or our old school hoopers or just the people who have really laid the foundation of this hobby. You look at the Barkers, you look at folks like Don Hamper, you look at just all these greats from over the years that have contributed so much. It's just really core group of keepers that paved the way for so many others, and they are willing to put that skin in the game. They're willing to say, I don't care about getting splashed in a dunk tank if it helps preserve this hobby. And it just goes to show it's not about the ego. It's about the love of the animals, and really, what are we doing if it's not for that?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And it's crazy because like back in the days of the forums and just only knowing a lot of those people through the forums, I've gotten to meet so many of them and like become friends with a lot of them. And like Keith McPeak, I remember I had some very strong feelings about him when I first heard about him because I was kind of introduced to him as like, oh, he had done some hybrid stuff. And then and that like really burns a lot of short tail people. And now like I consider Keith a great friend. Like he is an amazing guy. He's so like intelligent and he's so down to earth. And I like love him. I love his family, and they're just like such amazing people. And just being able to like, he was kind of like one of the guys who helped set the foundation for breeding short tails, and like especially Borneos, where I'm such a huge Borneo guy. He like set that all up for people like me.
Absolutely.
And it's crazy that like I can consider I sent him pictures the other day. I went field herping and I sent him some pictures of some copperheads that I found, and he was super geeked out about it. And he's like, I found a timber. You got to come down so we can field herp.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And it's so cool.
And that's it. These people are herpers, and that ultimately is the common thread that we share, and that we still get geeked out over whether it's the wild milk snake or the rattlesnake or the copperheads, whatever. But it's ultimately that love of the animals that transcends everything else, and it's not about who made what first or who did this or who did that. At the end of the day, it's all about the animals, and that's really what it comes down to. And as long as we don't lose sight of that, I think we stay on the right path.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm very glad that the world's first trend of like multiple species, but of course ball pythons, has kind of died away.
Yes.
A little bit. Because it was like, okay, cool, that looks cool, thanks for sharing. But then it was just like, yeah, you didn't actually make that first, bud.
Yeah.
So
Well, I just think about it from the perspective of Borneos because, like, almost every pairing that you do with Borneos is a world first because they're so variable.
Right, they're so different. And, it's kind of a double-edged sword because I look back to like the time when I was at Nerd, and that's when a lot of literally the world's firsts were happening. And it's kind of crazy being involved there in the height of the ball python
craze
trend or game or whatever we call that. And that's when, literally the foundation was being laid for so many of these morphs. And now it's like, okay, it's a world's first, but it's a combination of 15 other morphs that have already been made.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a different perspective on it now.
Back
then, I think it was really necessary to propel the hobby to the place where it is now because there is more exposure. There are more people involved. We do reach a wider audience, and as such, it gets people interested and seeing these animals in a favorable light. And so I know that there's a lot of kind of that tongue-in-cheek, ball pythons this, ball pythons that, and God knows I'm guilty of plenty of it myself. But by the same token, we look at what they've done for the hobby over the years, and I think it's important not to lose sight of that too. So it's kind of a balancing act. Yeah, when people only care about world first, or I did this or I did that, and then they get in a bickering match over, I can't believe it's not better, or I can't believe it's not lesser. That's a different thing. But it's you got to take the good with the bad, and just kind of remember where we all came from with it. So but no, and you're right. With the Bloods and Short Tails, you definitely don't see that kind of bickering. It's just like, how red can I make it?
Yes.
Yeah. I like that a lot more.
Is my face melting off yet? No.
I gotta put sunglasses on to look at it, so I think we're getting there.
Absolutely. Yes. One step closer. So.
Oh man.
But, yes, all a matter of perspective.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
In tandem with that, I think one of the things, I think we've talked about it before on the podcast, is just the relevance of the people who have laid the foundation for us to do what we're doing today. It's amazing that more people don't know a lot of these names.
Yeah.
Especially with social media now, because it's very easy to send a Facebook message or send somebody an Instagram message and and learn that info of who did this first or who was one of the pioneers of this, and then see if you can find them to touch base with them and learn from them. It's so much easier to do that now than it was trying to scour the internet for their website and then hope to send them an email and that it wouldn't get lost in the flood of emails.
Or catch them at an expo.
Right.
Or catch them at an expo. If they didn't travel for huge expos, and you're like, crap, the only way I'm going to be able to meet that person and shake their hand is if I drive 1,000 miles to this expo. It's so much easier now. So it's always amazed me as the hobby has progressed. Some of those people aren't even more known than what they already are. So I'm grateful that there's, especially it seems in the blood and short tail community, and even a bit in the carpet community, that those names are circulated around so much. That they're getting that cred that they deserve. And people are so willing to share that information. I think that is a massive plus to some of the niche parts of the industry.
Absolutely. And again, I think it goes back, it's kind of that testament of those people who are more concerned about the animals and their love of the animals than their love of getting their name known and out there, where you have to go and seek them out because they're not the ones splashing around all over Facebook going, look at me, or posting 15 different videos or whatever and making a spectacle of anything.
Right.
But yet they're still very willing to help and to reach out and to answer questions and to promote the species. And it's kind of this crazy phenomenon we've all been able to witness over the years. So
For sure.
It's been so cool to see some of the people who like started out, not small but smaller, and then have really built like almost like an empire. Like Matt Minatola is like the king of Borneo short-tailed pythons. And he's the nicest guy like ever.
Yeah.
He is so generous. He's like incredibly on top of his breeding game. He's just like very well-rounded keeper, And seeing him go from like doing a couple clutches a year to where he's at now with all the different ocelot things that he's producing and the extreme marbles and like all his projects that he's working on, he is just like it's been amazing to see where he's taken Borneos.
Absolutely. Well, and another example of that, I mean, you want to talk about a kid who came up through the ranks and is living the dream. Look at Nick Bertini, Cold-Blooded Earth. I mean, you know, I mean, I remember Nick coming to the shop and he was like, I think back and it's like, Nick, what were you, like 16 kind of thing? You know, he's just a kid. And seeing him at the White Plains Expos and stuff. And, you know, he went on to be a zookeeper and now he's just breeding bloods and short tails full time. And he and his wife, Kendra, have such a neat thing going with their collection and just all the efforts that they put in and just watching his abilities and his kind of his focus with his collection, because he makes some of the most mind-blowing Brongers Mymorphs. You know, I know Tracy has mentored him heavily and he's done a lot of work with her. But I mean, you can't find golden eyes out there that hold a candle to his, especially not the T-positive ones. And just some of the crazy stuff that he's really been able to develop with his bloodlines, because he is so laser focused on quality, and he's really been able to take that, you know, what started as a hobby and turn it into an obsession and now a livelihood. And it's just, oh my gosh, how do you not cheer for people like that who, you know, they put all their skin in the game and really turn it into something awesome. And it's just it's incredible to see.
And another just like really great guy, you know, just
oh my gosh, yes. And it's you want to talk about someone who will tell you how it is. It's funny. So like Nick Bertini and then Ryan Rumley are like two of my closest friends in reptiles, and so we constantly just have this group chat, and you know, it's wake up and all right, folks, let's make today our bitch, you know, that kind of thing, and just go forward, try to encourage each other, and you know, and it's great to have people like that push you forward to keep that motivation going, because as we all know, this is not all. It's not all easy and it's not all glorious, and these snakes will humble us, you know, over and over again. And so when you see people that can push through that kind of adversity and keep on going, it's like that's really what I think matters in the long run. And that's what separates those who are in it for the money from those who are in it for the love of the game, so to speak. So it's a neat thing to see people take it and be successful with it.
Yes, for sure. So what would you say, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to for the future, what you're doing?
Well, you know, it's funny. I took last year off, or I should say, you know, kind of the 2019 into 2020 season off, just because we had a bunch of crazy stuff going on at home, and it was time to kind of put things on hold for a little bit, and so did that, and then I now just have been growing some animals up and have a lot of really exciting stuff coming up for this year. Like I said, I'm going to breed $1 Million Baby finally for the first time. So that'll be line bred raspberry PE stripe, and then I'm doing a couple of years ago I got these insanely gorgeous cherry bomb outcross red-headed albino T-positives, and so I'm going to breed those into some stripe stuff. And I'm doing a martyr to martyr line breeding. Ryan Rumley, before he deployed overseas last year or the year before, it actually sent me some really beautiful snakes. Like, I have the best friends ever. And so he sent me this martyr female. Her name's Epitome. She's actually on my Instagram today, and she's just freaking gorgeous. And so she's going to be bred to a line bred martyr male named Bravado. So those will just be like mind-blowing reds. And then, you know, we're going to do some Curtis and try to make some really black snakes there. But this year should be just some crazy multi-generational red stuff, and then slowly working some albinos and stripes into it. I mean, y'all know me, I'm not really big into the morphs, just because I look at Nick and everything he's got going on with that, and I'm like, I can't compete with that. So I'm just going to stick, you know, I'm going to stay in my lane with my red snakes and be over here. Yeah, you know, and so there should just really be some insane stuff if all goes as planned. And so it's exciting, because now it's, you know, these are snakes that like their great grandparents came out of the wild, and now we're hatching multi-generational, like these red snakes that when they come out of the egg, they're so saturated with color that they're almost black when they hatch, and it's just, oh my gosh. Yeah, so some of that, it should be good.
Yeah. That's super exciting. And
thank you.
I think that there's room for that, though, because if you look at people, there's no one who's line breeding like normal ball pythons. Like, they're just not doing it. And for people to be able to do that with blood pythons, even if you're not producing the morphs, you can still have a very valuable animal, an animal that is still very desired, even though it's not a quote-unquote morph, you know?
Right. Oh, I do. I actually know quite well. And, you know, it's one of those things where it was actually part of my decision not to pursue this as kind of a full-time thing. 'Cause, I mean, I have a regular 40-plus hour a week job in corporate America. You know, thank God I get to work from home. Yay, the year of our COVID. But snakes are purely a hobby because I don't want to have to rely on selling them to pay my bills. Because, you know, some of these snakes that I hatch and I look at, and I'm really not trying to toot my own horn here, but I've gotten to the point now with the way things have gone and what's hatched that it's really tough for me to make decisions on what to sell. Because there's a lot of stuff that's really nice, and it's tough. Like, I would rather give some of these snakes to friends or to people that I like than sell them to someone that is going to take it and just try to make 100 of them and not really care where they end up. I mean,
yeah.
People call me a snob sometimes, and I don't really care. But because I have an application on my website to see where these snakes are going to end up, like I get pretty nitty gritty with potential customers because not for nothing, you know, it's been 20 years now that I've been doing this, and I don't want to just hand a snake over to someone that's not going to take good care of it or that is going to try to breed it to everything under the sun. And so I'm kind of picky where they end up, and I don't just want them to go anywhere. All that to say, that's why I don't do this full time, so that I can keep everything I make in a year and just watch them grow up and not feel compelled to have to sell anything to keep the lights on or anything like that. So that's where, and in order to really know and understand a bloodline, and that's something that I don't know that people quite do that with reptiles to the extent that they do with other species. Like, do you know how prepotent the snakes in your collection are? Do you know that you can take a certain animal and it's going to pass those genes on? It's going to leave a distinct stamp on its offspring, even though it's not something that's simple recessive or that it's not codom or whatever. Is it going to have a very strong influence on its offspring? And really, that's not something you're going to know until you grow those offspring up and outcross them and see what their influence is on other animals. And I don't know that people are doing that to the extent that they really need to understand how some of these various bloodlines work. And so, you know, it's kind of a crazy obsession, I think, in some ways. But it's the only way to really to know kind of how strong the bloodline is and where you can take it. And so, yeah, it's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah, and that's a massive show of dedication. Yeah. You know, as
insanity.
Keeper, you know, or insanity. You know, dedication. Dedication's certainly nicer.
Yes, it looks better on a resume.
Yeah. But you know, I mean, like it's something else that we've talked about before is like very often when you're thinking about people getting into wanting to keep reptiles. You know, so much that's force-fed to them is like being a ball python breeder. Yeah. You know, on social media and all that stuff. So it's always been about like breeding morph to morph versus like finding a polygenic thing that you are like, this is really cool. I want to see if I can recreate this and maybe isolate it and enhance it. You know, and Bloods and Short Tails seem to really be like zoned in on that. You know, and a lot of the people that I've seen that are in it and have been in it for a long time are like 100% true showcases of that dedication / insanity.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
When it comes to, you know, choosing not to do that as your main job, I think that is like really smart for most people. Like if a lot of people really glorify, like, I want to do reptiles full time. But when you're choosing whether or not you're going to be able to sell that holdback to keep your lights on or to pay your rent, it's like it can really put a dent in your breeding plans, but it's a smart business move for like your financial situation. And it definitely can be tough if you don't plan and assess and take all those things into account.
Right. Well, and you know, that's something we see every year. There's always someone that comes in the blood group. Oh, I'm going to, you know, how soon can I breed these up? Or what's the market going to be like for this or that? And it's just like, dude, nobody knows you. Nobody knows how you take care of your animals. Nobody guarantees that you're going to, sell them a feeding snake that's correctly sexed and doesn't come with mites and isn't, going to turn brown at 2 years. You really have to be prepared to keep every single one of these animals. And I think so many people just overlook that. And then they don't realize how expensive it is to feed them, whether you're buying feeders or raising feeders and breeding your own. I mean, it's all an undertaking. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining a collection, much less a quality collection. And too many people kind of have that in-game dollar sign thing going on. It's just like, no. That's not how any of this works. So, and by the same token, there are people that take it and run. You look at everything Kevin's accomplished. You look at folks like, Justin Kabelka and everything he's done. And you look at people like Nick Bikini and the Barkers and just all that. And because it's the passion that drives them and not the dollar signs that they are able to take what they love and do it for a living. And there's a distinction there for sure.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for the people who still have the full-time job and are able to focus on these snakes as their hobby and kind of have that luxury of raising things up and parting with the stuff that they know is not going to further those projects in the direction they want to go. So definitely food for thought.
It's the realness. Like, I feel like this episode is like just smacking a lot of realness on some people.
That's okay,
and that's great. No, and that's great. Because I mean, like I just said, so much of what's thrown at everybody in the industry is how to become a ball python breeder.
Yeah.
Right.
and
or
you don't,
geckos,
or leopard. Yeah. But I mean, I think about back in the early 2000s, so much of what was showcased on social media was like BHB.
Yeah.
And not a dig at Brian Barczyk at all, but he was just one of the few guys that was like, hey, I'm going to make some videos of my massive reptile collection and post it up. And it just became this flood of, I'm producing 50 plus clutches this year of $30,000 ball pythons, and you could make money too. And it's like, yeah, but you gotta put up or shut up.
Yep.
Because this hobby will humble you real fast, bro.
Tell me about it. I mean, you were talking about being humbled. I mean, unfortunately, we lost some really key snakes in our collection earlier this year to a heating malfunction. It's just like, do you pick up the pieces and move forward, or do you throw in the towel? And it's like, I think at this point I'm either too dumb or too stubborn to quit, because it's like I just have to see how red that next generation's going to be, so we'll go with that. Keep moving forward. But these things will absolutely humble you. And it's funny, you mentioned that thing about Barczyk and all of his videos, and you say kind of the early 2000s. I mean, early 2000s, that's back when it was still kingsnake.com and the Ralph Davis forums and Bob Clark forums, and we had the nerd forums and bloodpythons.com. And then it was like the early, like the 2010, 2009, 2010, that's when like Facebook exploded with all the reptile stuff. And it took on kind of this crazy quasi-celebrity mentality with a lot of it. It was just really interesting to see the way the industry evolved. So little weird piece of, I guess, social media herp history, but it's just been funny to watch the timeline of it, since literally from the early 2000s to 20 years later, and how crazy things have gotten in what feels like a relatively short time, but then we look at it and it's like, dude, that's been 2 decades. Like, what crap? Wasn't 2000 just like 5 years ago?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So, no way are we all be sold now. But,
Who the heck was I? I was talking to one of the staff at Nerd the other day, and we were talking about like how long we've been out of high school, and I was like, I had to think. I was like, oof, next year makes 10 years. I don't want to admit that.
Whatever. Like, I don't even know. I'm not even gonna pull at that thread, guys. I'm done being crotchety old lady herper for the night. It goes by fast.
Yeah,
it does. Really fast.
I just think very fondly of the years of the forums, because like that's where I met a lot of my friends in the reptile community, like the people I consider like close friends, and it was like a lot more tighter knit than Facebook is. And like I remember when you had posted some of the not first, but some pictures of some bumblebees, like some of the first bumblebees that Kevin had made. And you'd taken them in a bin and put them outside, and it was like the morning sun coming through, and you got these pictures of these bumblebees with these like bright green eyes, and they had yellow all over. And I just was like, oh my God. This is
I remember
amazing.
the exact pictures you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember it was oh my gosh, it was like we had this Sony camera, and I can't remember what it was called. We took it to the shop, and it had like the floppy disk. I mean, it was crazy. This was so long ago. And so yeah, there was that beautiful, beautiful bumblebee that Kevin had made. She was like I think we call her like the barbed wire bumblebee, because she was just yellow and then had that drizzled pattern all over and this bright green eyes. And it was just, oh my gosh. It was back when it was like, I can't believe I'm looking at this snake, and this is what this snake is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really cool.
And
that was really
one of the first times that I met you, you had actually had some blood pythons hatching out, and you were like, shh, look at this. And you like pulled out a bin, and I just saw these little tiny heads poking out, and I was like, oh my God.
I'm pretty sure that was like my very first raspberry.
It was. I know for a fact it was.
2008.
Yes.
Because I was just like, I can't believe that these actually happened. I've been trying for 2 years to get this bitch knocked up, because she was so awful. She was such an angry snake. And I'm sorry, my language is awful. I'm sorry. But she was just so angry, and I just, remember those snakes, and they were so red right off the bat.
Yes.
And now looking at where they are, and here we are 4 generations later. What the heck? No, they're black when they hatch, and they turn red, and it's insane. But yeah, it was, oh my gosh, it was so exciting to see those. And that's the part, and I know everybody talks about when they see the eggs tip and that kind of stuff, but every time I walk in and I see a female on eggs, and she's just in that perfect coil around them, and she's being that amazing mom, like that, bam, because that's when all the hard work and all the waiting and all the hoping and all the crossed fingers and bitten fingernails and sleepless nights, because I get crazy insomnia when I'm waiting for a clutch. You see that female on eggs, and it's like now it's a possibility. Now it's really going to happen, because the flip side of that is you walk in and there's like slugs scattered all over the place, or you have a female that gets egg bound and they hemorrhage or just some awfulness like that. Kind of going back to the humbleness thing, but it's like you see that female sitting on those eggs, and you're just like, all right, 2 months to glory, and here we go.
Yes.
So, that keeps me coming back. It's like, y'all got any more than python eggs? You get hooked, and it just doesn't stop. So.
And then to haunt the incubator for the next 60 to 70 days.
Oh,
oh my gosh. Well, and I'll tell you, that's kind of why I started gardening.
Yes.
Because gardening coincides with kind of when stuff is in the incubator cooking, and if I have plants that I can haunt, then I leave my snake eggs alone.
Yes.
And it's just better. It's just, and Ryan's like, check the incubator, leave them alone. I'm like, I'm going to the garden.
Yep.
I'll be in here. And it really, so seriously, if you need a way not to haunt your incubator, take up gardening. And it's a great stress relief for that.
There you go.
And then you can, you should, and then you can learn to can things and grow yummy things to send your friends.
Yes,
Did you try any of that yet?
I'm waiting, because me and Jeremy are gonna go through and try them all, because Jeremy was like, what you got there?
What you got there? Yeah.
Oh man, okay.
Those
so
bread and butter.
The candied jalapenos, get like some crackers and put cream cheese on those, and put your candied jalapenos on the crackers. Dude, it's super good.
Oh boy. I was already kind of hungry, but now that just made that made me cross over to like, I need to eat.
Jeremy is ravenous. Somebody feed the musician. Yes. So awesome.
Oh man, that's just thank you very much, Karen.
No, thank you. I mean, seriously. Well, part of it, right?
It is.
I mean, really, that's so much of why we do what we do is, yes, soaking up the animals is absolutely the core, being able to go in and pull that tub open and look at something glowing red and insane, but equally fulfilling or equally satisfying is when you've got friends who, they appreciate those animals just as much as you do, and you send them a picture, you're like, hey dude, come look at this.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You're geeking out over it. It's just like, that is the essence of why we do what we do, and it's so incredible.
100%.
100%, yeah.
100%.
Yes, never stop sharing it. Never stop paying it forward.
I agree.
That's
When I saw those Borneo girls sitting on eggs this year, I was just like, I'd come out like super early in the morning. Like I just couldn't sleep, and I went in and I've been checking on them like every day, 6 times a day. And,
right. And they're looking at you like, Rob, stop.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Until you leave us alone.
Yeah.
And then to just open up the drawer and see those little pearly whites in there, I was like, oh shit! And I'm sitting there looking around, no one's there. I'm like screaming. I'm like, yeah, look at that, right? That's it.
And
That's
it's so funny because. You know, there you are at Nerd, right, where you see that kind of stuff day in and day out, but when it's your snake and it's your efforts and it's like something that you wanted so bad for it to happen, it's like its own kind of magic. And it was one of those snakes was actually 2 of them were ones that I produced. So seeing, like, having raised those up from from watching them hatch out of the egg and then seeing them on a clutch of eggs, it was just like over the moon. Over the moon. It was amazing. Oh, that's the best. That multi-generational.
Yes. That is such a great feeling.
Oh my gosh.
So
yes. And then because you learn, you're like, all right, well, this is what I thought that those offspring would look like, and well, either I'm really right or I have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah. Took me to school. So, yes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that next. It's like, all right, next chapter. What are we going to learn?
That's exactly what I'm doing. This year is like my year where I'm like, okay, I learned some stuff from what I paired last season, and now this season I got all these ideas of which direction I want to take it in, and it's going to be in the opposite direction to see what can really happen. So I'm like, I'm geeked up.
Hell yeah.
So when you're doing that, like, how do you track your bloodlines? Because as you guys both know, you know, when we're not dealing with these very simple, you know, whether it's a simple recessive or something that's dominant or, you know, just something that is clearly defined in its pattern of inheritance, bloodline tracking becomes essential. So I'm kind of curious, how do you keep tabs on who's related to whom, who has the traits that you want to see, and how are they represented in your collection? Like, what's your method for that?
For me, I'm usually doing, like, I don't have a ton of different stuff. The 3 females that I bred this season are not related to one another, so pretty much everything's unrelated. One of the marble and the granite female that I bred this year, they were bred to the same male. So their offspring are half related. So those 2 clutches are half related. And then the other female that I bred is completely unrelated to everything else that I produced this season. So those babies, I just kind of labeled them for what traits I'm seeing or I think I see in them. And then as they grow, because I'm keeping a lot of them back to kind of see how they change over the next...
How many, Rob?
I don't want to talk about it, okay? But I'm not...
Keep them all.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm very tempted.
Yes, but do it. Just, you know what, you can always sell them later.
True.
Keep them all.
That's honestly what I'm looking at.
Regret.
Yeah.
Is like, there's some that I'm looking at, I'm like, you could be interesting in a year because I don't know, I've never seen one like you before, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, so those ones I just labeling as, okay, I noticed this trait, I see this thing that I'm looking at, and then the stuff that it was produced from a visual ultra to head ultra, so I'm assuming most of them carry that ultra trait in some way or form, and they definitely exhibit it in the majority of them. And then for the other ones, it was just like marble to marble and marble to granite. So there's like nothing to really, really distinguish besides that they share a male, they share a father from those lineage. So those babies that I'm raising up, I'm intending on outcrossing to other lineage animals, like getting some of Matt's marbles, or if I can find some other ones that are nice. I'd prefer to get Matt's stuff, but I know that he's wants to hold on to stuff too, so
I know.
Yeah. And for the other one, I'm really, this season is going to determine what direction I go in with this past season's babies, because I'm going in the opposite direction. The female that I bred this year that I'm talking about is a skunk line super stripe female that was bred to a ultra male, and so that produced the mother of this year's babies, and then she was bred to a visual ultra granite. And so those babies are like all over the board. There's like one that looks like a marble in there. There's the crystal kind of glow leopard looking one. There's these crazy striped ultras. There's these like weird ultras that kind of remind me of the lattes, but instead of like the brown spots on the sides, they've got these jet black spots down the sides. Yeah, I have to send you pictures of those because I really haven't posted a lot of pictures of them, but they are super geeking me out. They're just going through their first sheds right now, and I'm so geeked on them. So
yeah, gonna need to see those.
Yeah, this next season that I breed that female that's got that skunk in the ultra, I'm pairing her to something that has that same black. It's not the skunk trait. It's not from skunk lineage, but I believe it's the same black trait that's being expressed. So I'm breeding her to a male that carries that black trait to go in the opposite direction because she's half ultra, half skunk. So I bred her to an ultra, and then next I'm going to breed her to a skunk and see what the spread of babies looks like in that. Because I think that it's going to be really, really cool. Looking at some of the other things that other people have produced with that similar dark line trait and breeding it to head ultra stuff, I think it's going to be really cool.
That is awesome. I cannot wait to see what you make with that.
I have to send you some pictures. So
yes,
I probably won't
please.
do it tonight because we're going to be up late tonight, but tomorrow I'll send you some pictures.
It's all good. It's all good. Just whenever. And it's funny because, I mean, we had done a lot of stuff with Borneos here over the years, but then you kind of watch people take things in different directions. And like I look at what Minatola has done. I look at, what you're starting to do with yours. I look at even with, some of Nick's stuff and that he's done and just different people who have really taken Borneos and kind of their own special direction. I know Dan Magano, he's done stuff, but he got like the side swipes from us and that kind of stuff. And it's just so cool to see all of this. And at the same time, it's like, oh man, I want to be in there making that stuff at the same time. I could put red snakes there. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man, tell me about it. And it's, now we've got, so like funny thing to diverge a little bit. I went from keeping everything under the sun to a really, really narrow focus. And Ryan went from really, really narrow focus, and now he's starting to kind of branch out. Now we've got like Matthias, and we've got king rats, and it's like all these big, crazy, stinky glubrids, and it's like, so we got to battle for space a little bit from time to time. And so you have to make really, really selective decisions as to who you're going to keep. And so that's why it's like I look at some of these Borneos and yes, please send me pictures so I can geek out over all the amazing things that you're doing because as much as I wish we could do it here, it's like, there's just not room for everything at the end of the day. It gets rough because you miss it, but then it's like, oh man, look at Rob being a badass with his Borneos.
I'm trying.
And
I have a sideswipe head ultra male that I'm going to be breeding this season.
Sweet.
So
awesome.
We should see some
little
sideswipe stuff. And I'm raising up a little sideswipe girl too, so I've got some of that sideswipe stuff going on here too.
Cool. Did those come from Dan?
Yes, they did.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's funny because the sideswipes, like you'll get some that hatch and they'll be like kind of crazy low expression. So if you're not sure and you want to run some pictures by me, let me know. I'm happy to show you a thing or two. I have so many pictures of those from over the years. It's a neat line. It's really cool to see where people have taken that, and I'm excited to see other people kind of running and being successful with it. So good stuff.
All right, so we're getting down to the ending time here, but we have one question that we ask everybody who has been on the podcast. Okay. What in the realm of reptiles, it can be something in your collection or something that you've seen, a project that someone's working on, or a specific animal, what in the realm of reptiles has got you excited about reptiles?
Man. You know what in the realm of reptiles has got me excited is I look at various keepers who are taking the species they love and making it an art form, and not just ball python morphs, but people that are taking crested geckos and making them something ridiculous, or taking heloderma and just making these fluorescent orange and jet black Gila monsters and that kind of stuff. People who are focusing on quality, they're focusing on excellence, and then you see these pictures, whether they're featured on the Reptile Report or they pop up, on Instagram or whatever, and you're just looking at this and you get a whole new sense of an animal that maybe you've seen that species 100 times before, a dozen times before, or whatever, but then it's like, bam, it's in your face, and suddenly you're like, oh, like you're seeing it all over again for the first time. And that, I think, is what has me more excited than anything, is to see that there are people that are so dedicated to quality and they're so dedicated to making these mind-blowing things that it's not just any one animal or it's not just any one species. It's just like, rock on, take that focus and that drive and keep refining it and making it something awesome. That's what has me excited.
Hell yeah. I'm about it.
So, yes. And then also, because I have to tip my hat to Kevin and everything he has done on Nerd, that Leucistic King y'all have out there is crazy.
She's something
Love
else.
her to pieces.
Yeah.
She really is.
She
really
is. She definitely is. Man.
He texted me some pictures when she was first getting sent overseas to him, coming to America kind of thing. He's like, look what I got. I'm just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing.
Yeah. Weird flex, but okay, bro.
No, I mean, it's cool because we stay in touch and kind of talk about stuff from time to time. It's just like, oh my gosh, if anyone's the perfect person to kind of take that stake and run with it, I can't wait to see what y'all do with it.
Yeah,
so
for
it'll
sure.
be awesome.
So thank
stuff.
you very much, Kay, for being on. We very much appreciate it. We have to have you on again sometime soon. And
would love that. Yeah, hatching season.
Yes.
Hatching season.
Hatching next spring. We'll go over what's coming up next.
Oh,
I'm with it.
Before we go, though.
Yes.
If people want to find out more about you and what you're doing, where can they find you?
Well, we do kind of have the original.com. We are bloodpythons.com.
Yes.
If you go on Instagram, we are Blood Pythons. Facebook, The Blood Cell, or bloodpythons.com. You can find everything else from there, and that's kind of where we hang. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
But,
so have a good night. It was great talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sarah.
likewise. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This has been an absolute blast, and I cannot wait to see what y'all are going to do this season. So,
hell yeah.
Be safe and stay healthy and just keep the good stuff coming.
You too. Love you. Take care.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.